What up, guys? Head over to the website, elliottmarshall.com, and you can register right now for the Rocky Mountain BJJ and Mindset Retreat. It is going to be a weekend of 7 hours of jiu-jitsu, some mindfulness every day, starting with mindset and mindfulness work, and then we'll have an awesome time, lunch, dinner, all of that included. And you'll also have a nice outdoor excursion here in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. So elliottmarshall.com, all of the info under programs, retreats, Rocky Mountain Retreat. You can sign up now. First 10 people, $200 off. Let's go. What's up, guys? This is former UFC fighter Elliott Marshall, and you are listening to The Blueprint. I believe that there's a blueprint of how the most successful people structure their lives. They don't all do it the same. They don't all do the same things. And on this podcast, you're going to hear inspirations, motivations, and stories about how they go through their life. These stories will give you clues and tricks of exactly how you can discover your passion, find your power, and then go give your purpose to the world. Thank you so much for listening. Let's jump into this week's episode. This episode of the podcast, it's a good one, guys. I have a former UFC Light Heavyweight Champion of the world, Forrest Griffin, on the podcast. We talk about his career, obviously leaving his original gym and then moving on to another one, and then what it was like in his career, the height of his career, the lows of his career, and then moving on to what he's doing now, working with the UFC PI. So all of that in this week's episode. Forrest Griffin, the champ, is here. Let's go. What up, Forrest? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Good to see you again. Good to talk to you.
I appreciate you doing it, man. I don't know if, there's a lot of people in your life that you don't know if you would have had a career without. And you're probably one of them. That fight you and Stefan had really put us all on the map so that, and you were fighting for yours too, Yeah,
well,
but that blew it up.
We got to stick together, the tough alumni. We gotta.
Yes, we are tough alumni.
Even though
yes.
I actually cornered against you once.
You did? Who?
Vinny Magalhanis.
Oh, you cornered that fight?
I did. We were boys back in the day, and then I cornered on the finale when you won. We were in the locker room together on the finale. You won, and Vinny lost to Bader. Yeah. All right. I didn't know you were standing on the other side. I don't remember that. See? I was sizing up all 205ers. So when I was in the locker room with you, I was like watching you. I was like, this kid's pretty big. He looks pretty athletic. What's he got? Jiu-jitsu guy. Okay. All right. I see what's up.
Jiu-jitsu guy. Yep.
Just put that back there. You never know. You never know what's gonna happen.
Check.
Oh, him? Yeah. No, I got him. I don't remember that guy.
Nice. I don't remember that. I mean, I remember the video.
No, you weren't supposed to. I was just I wasn't telling you I was taking notes. I was just taking notes.
What I remember about the Vinny fight is Dwayne's an intense dude, right? And Dwayne was cornering me for that fight.
Yeah,
Dwayne Ludwig. And he looks at me as we're about to walk out, and Sean Tompkins was Vinny's corner too. And he looks at me and goes, He looks at me and goes, I don't fucking lose to Sean Tompkins. Yeah. And I was like, huh? He goes, yeah, I don't fucking lose to Sean Tompkins. And I was like, cool, dude. Are you two fighting or go make sure this happens?
You're like, well, I will also not lose to Sean Tompkins as none of us are fighting him. So we'll be all right. Hey, right. You know what? I don't lose to Vinny Magalhanis. So there.
Yeah, I just like Dwayne always pulls shit on that, like me, where he would look at me with something like that, like this, like I'm gonna fuck you up if you fuck this up. Look,
you were
we're
like the early Denver Pioneers coming out of that.
I was at Denver, yeah.
There wasn't a ton going before you guys. Now that I didn't even know, obviously I knew Dwayne Bang Ludwig, but I didn't know what was going on up there. Now, the whole area is like a big training mecca now.
It is.
Could be right Denver,
Mm-hmm. It was very interesting because everyone was separate, for example, between, like Nate trained and Dwayne trained, and they were the guys that were good. And they would train together sometimes. Yeah, Marquardt.
Yeah, he's a stud.
And then I wanted to fight at a mall. My jiu-jitsu teacher called Dwayne, and because I couldn't strike for shit, and this was like 2005. So he called Dwayne, and Dwayne started working with us. And then when we got a little better, he took us to where Nate was training, which was T's KO, Trevor Whitman, one of Trevor's first gyms. And, you know, we would meet there twice a week, maybe. And then it morphed into what became Grudge, where all of us were training. And then and that was me, Shane, Brendan Carwin, Brendan Schaub, Nate, Cody was training there. As far as like names you're going to know, Rashad would come up. And then we had this Jackson's connection too. So the Jackson's guys would come up.
Marquardt trained at Jackson's and Rashad trained at Jackson's, and they would kind of cross-train you guys. Yeah.
Marquardt, Nate mostly trained in Denver. He would do week-long. He would go to, for like the end of camp, he would go to Jackson's.
Okay.
And that's how, and then we all started doing that too. So that was that connection. And then we kind of broke off. So, and did our own thing after that.
What did you think about that on a physical, kind of changing your camp up at the end like that? I mean, it's another place with good altitude, which is a plus, but like, you know, if you're going to get cornered by the Jackson crew, I guess good, but you're only going to work with them for 2 or so weeks.
I would go down all the time. No, okay. I would go down all the time. So I would, even out of camp, I'd be going, I love Greg. Yeah, I loved Greg. So Greg and I had a very strong connection just on a human level. So, and I think that's a very important thing with cornering, right? Like in coaching.
He's oddly pleasant to be around. He's just funny and self-deprecating and just kind of you know, he knows what he's talking about, but at the same time, he's so confident he can let himself be goofy, which I like.
He embraces himself fully.
Yeah. You know who else does that is Jamal, the current 205-pound champion. He walks around like, you know, he's like a relatively fit guy, but he walks around with his stomach distended. Like, you know, he walks around like if he was 5'6", people would pick on him. But he's a big guy. He just doesn't even care, you know? Like, he's always making like
I think he's more than relatively fit. He just went 5 rounds.
Yeah. With a 3-week camp, he went 5 rounds.
Right.
You know?
So, damn, that's all it was for him was 3 weeks?
Well, he was supposed to fight
Anthony Smith.
Right, Anthony Smith and blah, blah, blah. And they were actually training together. And then he got the call up, and then they started training together. So, yeah. So he was training for a fight, but it would have been a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight.
Not a 5-round fight.
For the belt.
And the champ.
In Brazil.
Yeah, so in Brazil. So, I mean, he looked amazing. What was, I want to go to, because this podcast is really about, first, it's about how to like make yourself, you know? And I think there's two parts to your story, Forrest, a little bit.
When I do that, should I call you back in and I'll be a guest when I figure out how to do that? Or BS now? It's really like bullshit right now.
Man, just make it up, okay? Just fucking make it up as I ask questions, okay?
That's what I've done so far. So why would I change anything now?
You know, don't take yourself too serious, right? Yeah. So I think there's really 2 parts of this from an outsider's perspective, looking at your career. And I don't know you like super personally, right? But just looking at the career that you had, you became UFC Light Heavyweight Champion of the world, coming off tough and really setting that stage. And then there was this where I think almost all fighters drop the ball is post-career. And I think, because you see a lot of fighters, boxing, everything, doesn't matter what the fighting is. Their career ends, their life just goes into the shit. And the next thing you know,
start of your new career. Yeah.
Start of post-fighting career, right? Yeah. So, and we're seeing it now, right? We're seeing a lot of sad stories coming out of people, you know, and I know you were very close with Stefan, but it's not just him, right? It's not just him. So there's 2 parts here that you've been able to overcome, it seems like.
Well, and then you think about people our age, kind of our peers, they've all gone through this, you know, and you've done well for yourself. You're still in the sport. A lot of guys have done well, but a lot of guys and gals have not done well. They're RA. Right. They knew they were hanging on just for a paycheck, and they didn't really, have the ability. They had the love and the passion, but not the ability to compete. And then what I found out in my last couple of years in 2013 and 14 was that training people is fucking hard. Like, it is hard. It is not financially rewarding. You're on somebody else's schedule. You're sitting in a bus waiting for some asshole to make weight to talk on the mic. And, some of that fight week time, I just felt like, and this is going to sound a little arrogant, but I just felt like, look, if I could give them the 1 or 2 hour work they need a day for this week, that would be a great exchange of time. But it is not worth my time to sit here and ride around on buses and wait in front of, wait in hotel lobbies to be picked up. And the other thing is, like, I was still at a place where if we're sitting waiting in the hotel lobby trying to, get ready to go to whatever press conference or open workout, there's no way to sound this without sounding a little arrogant, but I was still kind of in that realm, that time span. People would start coming up to me and like, yeah, it's not about me. It's about the guy that's fighting later this week. And like, you become like almost more of a distraction. And it's like, well, this sucks. And I don't like waiting. I had to do something else. I don't want to do this. I mean, I like the actual 2 or 3 hours a day where you're like talking about fighting, telling people about fighting, running a practice. And then I like, I still do the homework as far as what are the techniques out there? What are people doing? How can I improve, whatever. But yeah, it's just, and then now I'm at an age physically where I can't even drill with people. So it's a tough kind of, basically what I'm saying is I admire you guys because this is not an easy way to make a living. It's a very tough job, thankless job. And the people that don't know.
I don't make a living that way.
Yeah.
I have two fighters, right? So I have two fighters. I kicked the rest of the fight team out at the end of 2021.
Yeah.
For these reasons, because from my perspective, with those guys, 60 fighters, I only had 3 anyway that actually paid me.
Yeah.
So I'm doing all this work for 57 other people and 6 other coaches to have a place. And I'm like, man, this is to deal with bullshit. And you're like, fuck this, and now I have my 2 people that love me but that's the only reason why. You can't do it for financial means. If you're doing it for financial means, it's going to ruin you. It will absolutely ruin you because you'll have to do shady shit, in my opinion.
Yeah. And we've seen that too, but right. The money will get better, and it's been a slow trickle down, but the money to the coaches, the organization, the contracts, that needs to get better. There needs to be more of the conversation about what's expected on the athlete side. I'm actually writing an article about this, kind of like a little, slideshow about like, what is that initial, what are you looking for in a coach? Do you even know? How do you judge if it's a good coach or a bad coach? How do you know if your relationship fits in with the gym, the training partners, the coach, and I see this all the time out in Vegas where you have some really good coaches, but guess what? They've all got 6, 7, 12 people ahead of you. And, there's some great gyms and great coaches, but it comes down like on the depth chart where you are as well,
100%.
Traveling every other week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, he's gone, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, he's gone. Then like, well, you're only getting half a week of training. What are you paying for? And then, the conversations need to start happening. And put them in writing,
Yeah, the contract, right, is something that we've always talked about. Put it in writing, lay the expectations down. It's a hard thing for the athlete, though, Forrest. You've been one, right? Like you've been one, and that's where your career started.
Yeah.
And you go ahead.
No, I was relentlessly cheap, but I was very upfront about my cheapness, and I paid per week cash, and I was like, this is what I'm willing to pay you for this fight. And if you ever notice, like I would do open workouts by myself, just shadow boxing, because I didn't feel like paying somebody to come spend a day with me and hold mitts for 10 minutes. And I was always like, I'm gonna pay you poorly, but it's gonna be cash, tax-free, and this is what I'm paid, this is what I want. And, I don't expect any more. So I set the low expectation. And then, that was kind of my deal. And, I actually got as much out of at that time, and I'm sure you did too, from training partners, like I cornered guys like Mike Pyle and Gray Maynard, and they just cornered me back, in return. And that was a really good, like, One Extreme Couture was really cranking the first time when I was there, and it kind of built up and it blew up and became this great thing. That's what we had going. Where, like, I was taking my time to go corner somebody a week after I fought or 3 weeks before I fought, where I was actually, making myself a little bit uncomfortable, like going to, God knows what shows. I forget, I can't even strike force shows to corner people,
Sure.
3 weeks before my fight. And it's like, okay, that's a team. That was the dynamic of the team. And, that kind of.
That was the dynamic of every team.
Yeah. And now it's come back, though, at least for Extreme Couture, they had a.
You're starting to see it. You're starting to see it, right? Like Sean Strickland and those guys, they all corner each other. And they have like one coach.
Well, and I'll tell you,
Eric in there is the coach, right?
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
And it's a good point.
There's a lot of.
I cornered.
And who you should have on to talk about that specifically is Uriah. He's a really good. Yeah, Uriah Faber with his gym layout. And, how these are the practices. You pay X, you come to the practice, $150 a month. You can come to all the practices you want. Now,
right.
If you want coaches, you work out a deal with them on the side, and they will come to these practices and do privates and whatever, like this is what's included. You can come to, like, use the mats for $150 a month. Everything else, if you want to actually be coached and cornered, you got to approach those. We have 5 or 6 coaches. You see which ones you get on the best with, and those are your people that you pay, So
and what's that pay look like? Do you know? Is it like 5% a coach?
I don't know. I always did it. Oh, here's another thing. I actually, if I pulled out of, I think 2, maybe 3 fights in UFC, 2 fights, and I paid coaches for those fights because I've been paying for those training camps the whole time,
Right.
So that was like a financial risk I was willing to take, to not say, I'll give you 5% of my back end, because I didn't want to,
Yeah. Interesting. I've not heard it done that way, because most people, it's a percentage of the back end.
Yeah.
Like I'm a percentage of the back end, and I'm being super honest. If somebody wanted me to work with them now, like I would just do a flat rate, a very, very a high flat rate. And wherever you get to working with me, like if you become the champ and you're making 10 million, well, shit, you're still paying me 30,000, and that's it. It won't go up. Right. But but when you're making 30 and 30, if you lose, I get the whole fucking thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is like, and this is another interesting thing about the sport. Athletes do outgrow coaches. If you think about the MMA coaching profession, the only other sport I really know is football and basketball. And you have middle school coaches that are really good at these developing athletes and the fundamental skills. And then you have high school coaches, which put some more tactical strategy in it, but there's a lot of skill. You're touching on that skill. Then you have college coaches, and they're not even teaching that much skill. You might have a defensive end coach that makes you do drills, and they're slightly different than the drills you've done before, but they're teaching tactics. They're teaching the game plan, the film, the thing. And so I think, because I left my coaches, and it was kind of a mediocre, out of Georgia, hardcore gym, Roy and Adam Singer. And I left my coaches, and I would not have made it in fighting with them. In fact, I was living on Roy's
couch, right?
Yeah. I was like living, so like I wouldn't, like, I don't know. I literally would have had to like call my mom and have her come pick me up. I just lived at my mom's house as like a 20-year-old man, if it hadn't been for them. I would have given up fighting many times, and I still left them when I felt I outgrew them.
So when you say you wouldn't have made it in fighting with them, not without them, with them is what you said.
No. But I wouldn't have made it without them to the Ultimate Fighter. I wouldn't have made it that far. Like I would have quit. I would have quit before I even got close to the dream,
Sure. And to really realize the dream, you feel like if you would have stayed with them, you would have never realized it.
Well, so the last couple of fights I did there, my first couple of fights in UFC, they were help finding people off of the underground forums and having them fly in and basically stay with us. Like they were putting people up so I could have the appropriate bodies for the training. And you think about that, like as you develop in your career, first, you're just worried about yourself. You fight anybody, anywhere, you're just trying to be the best version of yourself. But when you get to that UFC level and you're fighting a guy that you know is a jiu-jitsu whiz, probably better at jiu-jitsu than you. I was fighting Elvis Senesek. You need to bring somebody in that's good at jiu-jitsu so you can experience that. And you can see what a really active guard feels like, as opposed to, you know what I'm saying? So then we started doing that. And it wasn't just that. For me, I was about 225 pounds. So we also had to give somebody, you know, I could get the look, but the guy I was getting the look from was $170. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I'm sure you experienced this too. It's like, well, I have a guy that's probably as skilled as Elvis Senesek, but he's 30 pounds lighter. It's not going to be the same. You know, I could get away.
Yeah, that's what it was like with me and Vinny, right? Like I have someone as skilled as, like, you know, maybe not as skilled, but I have good jiu-jitsu guys. But they're 170 and 180, right? Vinny's 240.
Yeah.
If he's on a big difference.
If he's on a diet, it's 240. Yeah.
If he's on, didn't he go to the fucking hospital trying to make weight for that Gordon match? Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And the weight was 230, I think, or 240, and he was like trying to do it all last minute. Anyway, what was that like for you to have that conversation with Rory and his brother?
Adam, it was. I mean, you know, in the end, they loved me, and it was like Brandon and his coaches at Entrim. They wanted the best for me, and they thought it would be a good idea for me to come out here and you know, like test the waters or to go somewhere, basically, to be in the room full of bodies and to see, you know, to grind a little bit. Not that we weren't in Athens, we were. But, you know, we started literally like we went to these jiu-jitsu clubs in Atlanta. We went to spar with K1 kickboxers. For whatever reason, there was a huge, large amount of the K1 guys at that time. The early aughts were based out of Atlanta. I have no idea why, but there was really good kickboxing there.
Okay.
So we got to go to Atlanta to spar, you know, good boxing gyms. You got to drive 2.5 hours to Atlanta, you know, so it was getting kind of like, you know, we do our skill practices with us, but then if you want live go, you kind of had to go somewhere. So we started changing that up. And part of that, honestly, was just because of the size. There's not a ton of skilled heavyweights. You know, when you walk around 230, 225, you can beat up those 185ers without being more skilled than they are, you know?
Right. It's not a realistic look.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing that you saw in the early days with competition, right? Is that the training partner thing was a hard thing. And that's why Super Gym started, right?
Yeah.
Extreme Couture. Because you needed realistic look. You needed 7 other light heavyweights to train with.
I need a light heavyweight that's good at this. I need one that's good at this.
Yep.
And that's how you round your game out. And it's also nice, too, if you think about the developmental curve. If you're at the very bottom, you're not going to get that much better. You'll get a little better, but if you're at the very top, you're not going to get that much better. If you're in that middle, that's when you're going to make the most development. When you have people that you can practice your offense on and people that you need to practice your defense on and people that you can have a bad day and still beat and people that if you have a bad day, you're getting crushed. But on your best day, you can work with them a little bit. You know, that's kind of what you need, right?
Have you talked to John Danaher about this? Have you ever heard his thoughts on this?
I cannot make it through a John Danaher post. So no, I've never spoken to him about this. I haven't.
And he's the jiu-jitsu instructionals that I watch, bro. When I ride my Peloton, like we were talking about, I have to have it on 1.5, 2 times speed.
I don't know
what the best shit,
bro.
Oh man,
I don't know what you.
Anyway, he thinks he believes mostly in training with people that you're better than, but you have to do it right.
Yeah. Well, and this is something I've done before. Is not even tell your partner what you're doing, but say, all right, I'm going to work on that half butterfly sweep. Like I'm going to work on my far near side overhook butterfly sweep, and just don't even tell them and just try to keep hitting it. Or, all right, I'm going to allow myself to get put in the front choke position and then work my way out, you know?
Yep.
Like
that's what he believes. He believes, and then you slowly build, as you go. but very little time. The very small amounts of your time should be training with people that are your skill level, because you'll get frustrated in the learning development stage of that.
I definitely see that. And I think maybe that's resulted from the people he teaches being so damn good. Who the hell, it's like, and that's kind of the boxing theme. Boxers don't, if you think about, they don't bring in 3 or 4 other boxers that are as good as them to spar with like we do. There's some great Manor pointed out to me. It's like, dude, you're working with Vanderlei, you're working with Couture, you're working with Vitor, you're working with like people that are like, why are you doing that? Those are like fights. Twice a week, you're fighting other people. Like, do you think Floyd Mayweather brings in like slightly bigger people that are as good as him? Or no, he brings in, 3 or 4 guys to beat on. Oscar De La Hoya, all those guys. The boxing training camp is like, you get sparring partners, and then you have guys like Tyson Fury. If they're too good of a sparring partner, they send them home. When Fury was like Klitschko's guy or whatever, like, you don't like that, and the coach is like, So
it can destroy your. I can see it. It can destroy your confidence, man. Right?
Yeah.
It can destroy your confidence if you're getting fucked up all the time, and then you got to go fight. Like, you're not really believing in yourself.
I've seen the opposite happen with 2 guys, and they both happen to be Hawaiians. Brad Tavares, he came in when he was young and green, and he was getting crushed. And by the end of my career, I was like, fuck, I got to spar with Brad. He like worked his way up where he was like, top dog. The other one was Spider, not Anderson, obviously, but the Hawaiian guy, Kendall Grove.
Kendall Grove,
for the first 2 years, I thought, like, I was like, dude, you shouldn't probably do any more rounds with Randy Couture. By the 3rd year, though, I'm like, are you holding your own with me? How dare you hold your own with me right now? This isn't what we agreed upon 3 years ago. How did you get, another one I saw in wrestling was Martin Kampman. Martin Kampman came in, no wrestling. This also because he was a good striker already, but he had no wrestling. You just grab him, you just take him down if you want to. By the end of it, I was like, we're doing drills where you have to shoot on somebody, and you're like, I don't want to do that because he's going to end up taking me down. You're doing like shoot drills, and you're like, fuck, how did this kid get so good? So I've definitely seen the opposite, but how many people have come in the gym and, gotten broken before they ever made that big step up? And I can think of a few pros who I won't mention, who I think left the room because they were just getting beat up and there was no reason for it.
Yeah. What was the end of your career like, Forrest? You became light heavyweight champ. Hold on. First, let me ask this question. What was it like to become the light heavyweight champ of the world, beating Rampage?
It was awesome, and this is something I was like, that was cool. Let's do it again. Like that night, I was like, okay, I have to do, So, and I'm glad that was my mentality, because obviously I lost it in the next fight. But, I don't ever feel too bad about it because I controlled everything, and, I set myself on a different path. I worked with the people I needed to. I probably overdid it a little bit, if anything. I said, all right, I'm really gonna take it to the next level.
What did it feel like?
I don't know. I mean, I think BJ Penn for me summed it up the best when he says, winning's great. Winning's okay, sure, winning's fine, but the important thing is losing sucks so bad. I want to avoid that. And that's what I always felt. Like winning, sure, win. That's great. That's almost like expected, but as long as I don't lose, because I hate losing. Losing just sucks so bad. And then to get stopped in fights, you're like, oh, you're kidding me. Yeah, So it was nice, but I tell you, the big moment for me, the big mentality shift was actually the finale, the Ultimate Fighter finale with Stefan, because that was the first time I knew, hey, guess what? I'm a professional fighter. I'm not a bouncer. I'm not a cop. I'm not a DJ. I'm not a landscape artist. I'm a professional fighter now, for real. Like, I'm not going to teach intro boxing and BJJ classes, which is how I taught, how I paid for my gym membership. I don't have to go, bounce anywhere. And then it was like, oh shit, I'm out of excuses. Like, I really got to do this thing, So that was for me the big mentality shift. You know, I was like, oh, it was real after that.
What was let's say after that fight then, because I mean, like the whole sport blew up after that fight, right? Like,
yeah,
we were off pay-per-view as a sport. We were kind of like this laughing stock. I remember my parents like, what the fuck are you trying to do?
So great,
like,
though,
you
right?
know? What's that?
It was the best, though, right? Like, people,
yeah.
And then, you know, again, it's like,
what was it like for you though? Because like you went to instant star after that, kind of over in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was it was like you said, it was a mentality shift. It was okay, now I got a day job. No, people start recognizing you, and it's pretty weird, but and I didn't always handle it the best, but for the most part, I didn't change too much, for better, for worse. I was still like very much the same. I was like, and I the same now. I'm sure. You're probably like, yeah, this is the same guy I saw on TV, 20 years ago.
20 years ago, yeah.
I guess I should have worked on some personal development over the years. Oh, well.
What was the end like, Forrest?
What's that? The end.
What was the end like?
It sucked shit. So I had accepted that I was never going to be champion. After the Shogun fight, I said, all right, you're not going to be champion. And that's fine, whatever. That was because the reason is for Rashad, bad camp, excuse for, I had for the Anderson fight, got knocked out, knocked out cold, don't remember the day, like 14 days to the day before the fight. I had like all these.
You got knocked out before the fight with Anderson.
Yeah, I got knocked out cold. Like, I was so knocked out, my wife took me to the hospital to get an MRI, and I don't remember any of that.
Who knocked you out?
Bristol Marundi, who'd never so much as hurt me before. Never. So, like, it was my
I coached Bristol. Day. I coached Bristol on The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, it was my last day. It was the last hard sparring, and my dumbass had gotten up to do a shooting course, like a gun safety shooting course in the morning, because I'd been waiting for like a year to get a membership to the shooting club. And it was like, that was the day I had to do it. And I was like, all right, it's 4 hours, whatever. I go to, so I'm kind of exhausted, and I'm like, well, it's Bristol. I'll just get 3 hard rounds, call it good, and then start to taper down, just mitts. And yeah, it was the last 3 hard rounds we were supposed to do. And, I don't think it was on purpose. Like, what he did was he threw a right hand, caught me clean with the right hand, and then followed with the right head kick. And that's what he told me. I couldn't tell you. I told I fell into the ropes and stuff, but I was like, the one thing I'll say is like, all my equipment was put away. Like, my hand wraps had been rolled up, my equipment was put away. And I said, oh, you guys put my equipment away for me, thanks. And they were like, nah, you did that, bro. I said, really? Just on autopilot, what do you do?
Sure. What do you
put my equipment out to dry, or, So it was just, funny how much you can do off autopilot, which is why, that conditioning and fights, whatever, is important, where you see guys do hit autopilot
fight
for 20 or 30 seconds and then come back.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, they're awake. So anyway, yeah. Point is, Shogun in Brazil, no excuses. Great camp. I was in great shape. Every test we were doing, I was crushing it, sparring, crushing everything, crushing it. I took like one up kick to my jaw, like towards the end. And that's only because, I was kind of like, I was being a little rough on a guy that was mostly a jits guy. And I was using him for that. And I was kind of bullying him a little bit. And so he just started like up kicking, like in a panic. And my jaw was like hurting my ear. But no, for the most part. Oh, and also, well, I do have an interesting one, but it didn't affect my fight at all. It was kind of funny. My wife started going into labor that day.
That's right. Didn't you get to fly back on the private jet, on Dana's private jet?
Dana flew me back home, and if he hadn't, I would have missed the birth of my only child.
All right.
Yeah.
Good for Dane.
Thank you, Dana. Yeah. So anyway, the point is, I didn't have excuses for that one. I really shit, man, I was pretty healthy. I didn't get sick. I didn't get knocked out. Training was good.
I didn't get hurt, right?
Yeah, I didn't, like, I was healthy. Like, before I was like, oh, well, my shoulder, I couldn't train like I wanted or this or that. I was like, fuck, that was it. That was like the best version of me. And I still got knocked out in the first round. And then I was like, man, if I could just fight like other old people twice a year, I could probably do this for 3 or 4 more years, It's like just to be in it and to do it. And, then I just blew my knee out before I was supposed to fight Phil Davis. And then, I was kind of coming back and I was feeling pretty good because I was actually doing like plyos with like high school kids in my PT place. And I was like, man, I might do this. I might come back. And then I blew my knee out again, like 9 months after that. So I was like, it was just the MCL the second time. But then I was just like so frustrated that I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want anything to do with any of it. And
how was your life? How'd you feel about like, yourself?
I went through depression. Also, too, like I'm just an active guy, like physically active, like, not just to be physical, work out, break sweat, get some endorphins. And, I couldn't do that for a long time. And, even when I did like come back and train and mess around after basically a year of not doing sport because of the knee injuries, I was so shit. We're talking about 2014. I'm like, really? Do I suck this bad? Do I suck? Is all my timing gone? Do I have to tap because my knee's in the bad place? Oh, I can only do half guard top this side, not this side. Literally, like my left knee is in guard.
Yeah.
I had to switch my knee because I'm no man. It's like, man, what am I doing here? So it was
I had a year of injury last year, and all of my students asked me every time we train if I'm okay. I'm like, God damn it, I'm fine. I'm fucking fine.
We're down. You're fine for down.
Don't do this. Don't do this 26 list thing, and I'm fine. Yeah.
Other than oh no, you can't push that. Only push my head on the other side. I got this stick on my neck there. Yeah. So I know no right arm and no left leg. It's really hard to do.
How'd you move on?
Well, I was one of the fortunate ones. I had some opportunities, and Lorenzo Fertitta was actually like, "Well, come on in, start working for us." And I didn't know what the hell. And you probably heard the story, right? I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was actually like doing some acting stuff and doing some coaching and just kind of whatever. And then I just started showing up to meetings. Like nobody knew what to do with me. I just started showing up. And if you show up enough, people start being like, hey, do stuff. And then all of a sudden, people start noticing if you don't show up. And I was like, oh, I was like, what have I done? Now I'm like working. And then, but it was awesome. Like if there's anything I ever wanted to be an expert about, it's how to train for the sport of MMA. Right. So now I'm at the Performance Institute. I got to be involved in this since the kickoff. And, like there's a lot of fancy shit happens. But at the end of the day, how do we prepare you for the actual fight, for the physiological demands of the sport, for the, for all these things, basically? Like, how do we help the athlete perform at their best on fight night in the octagon? Have an easier time making weight, be more injury resilient. Acquire skills more rapidly with less physical deterioration from that skill acquisition time, right? Like how do I drill without getting beat up? How do I,
what are the top 3 things?
Well, first off, good partners. The other thing is load management. It's the top thing. The top thing would be load management. The other thing would be breaking your practices into physical and skill based. Like this is a physical base. I'm putting in practice what I know. And then the technical skill sessions where you're like, I'm trying to keep my heart rate at 130 to 120 to 140. I'm drilling, I'm working, I'm moving, we're flowing. I'm learning. The other thing, and this is the biggest thing, have a plan, a weekly, monthly plan. Review that plan. Every Sunday or Saturday night, every athlete should have their notebook of what they did. Check, 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 check. I did this. I got this. I did this. I did. And then you should write your next week's plan. And if you have like a real coach, a good coach, Then they'll start putting in, these are your high days, your intense days, these are your low days, your more moderate, more technical days. And they put them in such a fashion as to where when you spar, you're sparring hard. Remember, it's an intense sport, but it's only 15 or 25 minutes max. And then you're building that cardio base, doing the drilling so that when it comes time to go, boom. The other thing about sparring, I'll kind of jump off and jump back on that.
Yeah.
Sparring for me is decision-making under pressure. And I think that is one of the most important things. And this is what you see out of these Thai guys that fight every month, or the guys at Anderson that have been in 1,000 fights and they didn't take a lot of damage, that they've just got such a big computer. It's like, if you think about it, they've seen so many errors and done that mental process of changing, yes, no, this, and finding out what works. So when they're able to make that decision so quickly, it's automatic,
It's interesting because we didn't do that, right? Like, we just fought. Like, that's what I remember from training camp, is you just fought every day. Whether it was wrestling, it felt like a fight. Whether it was jiu-jitsu, it felt like a fight. Everything felt like a fucking fight. So
I never did this. This is what you probably did the same thing. Monday, I grappled hard. Tuesday, I boxed, kickbox hard. Wednesday, grapple hard, wrestle hard.
Yeah.
So I had like 4 to 6 hard days a week. Now they would say, well, you can have 3 to 4 hard days a week, but those days in between, they're going to be more technical days. You're not going to blow yourself up, right? So,
right.
And that's what I didn't understand, is that it's actually better to have 24 hours without that practice, other than I'll go hard this day,
So that's because we were coaching for the most part, like you said, though, we were coaching ourselves. We were coaching ourselves. We were cornering ourselves. We were just figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And
we were figuring it out.
Some people figured it out really, really well, and some didn't. And that's why this sport is about to take a jumping off, because people like you are in the coaching game. This is the first generation of people to go through it now, becoming coaches. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That have ever really been in pure MMA. Now, you got guys that have done like other combat sports or were in other, but now you got people that were legitimate. Let's use Mike Brown for an example, right?
Champ.
Yeah.
He was a champ.
He knows his shit. He fought 20, 30 times. He's made all the mistakes. So now he's got a better understanding of what to do not to make mistakes and how much you really need to practice. And then again, if I'm 25, I can be banging it a little bit, and I need to be in there just getting after it. If I'm 31, all right, I need my practices to be quality. I need to be upkeeping my skill work, and now maybe even I need like more time doing the physical prep stuff. Like, instead of sparring for my conditioning, which you can do, you can wrestle for conditioning, always worked for me if I could stay healthy. Now maybe you're on an airdyne, you're on a treadmill, you're on a track doing your conditioning to build that up, because there's a lot less risk of injury.
Look, I try to have Drew Dober spar as little as possible, and he can't, because I know he's a gamer. Like he's a gamer. We don't have to wonder how he's going to act and react in the fight. So now sparring can become about timing, and trying to get his timing, but we don't need to like kill him in the sparring. I'd rather kill him on conditioning style jiu-jitsu drills, right? Like reaction drills and things like that, because if I were going to kill him.
So the important thing is drill. So we have a fixed outcome, and it's a stop. Mm-hmm. So the greater your uncontrolled, the most free and alive the situation, the greater your chance for injury. So we're going to do this. If I get you off of me, the drill is over, and we'll reset and we'll go really hard. But it is in those unknown positions where, that's where you get more injured.
I personally, Forrest, to be honest with you, I like to have, for example, like the top guy, or let's say we're doing feet to floor, because I really like feet to floor. I'm going to fit in a certain way with my striking, and then you have a choice of giving me 2-3 reactions that I instantaneously have to figure out. Right. And then when I put you down, let's say the bottom guy has to sweep now, right? Yeah. Now I'm giving you 2 to 3 reactions that you're figuring out instantaneously. Now in there, it's a live-ish thing, right? but it's not like live. We're only speaking, like I like to, and I stole this from John, to be honest with you. We're narrowing it down really fine. Like we are going to deal with closed guard, person has posture. Closed guard, person's posture is broken. Another situation. Open guard, person standing above me. Like where we're really, and now I have to give reaction until I can just react to everything. And then when you put it together live, you see it done really well. But you don't have to, but with guys like Dober, you don't have to, and guys, Dustin Poirier doesn't need to fucking spar, right? The dude is a gangster. Gangster.
At this point, so his age, it's just gonna hurt his chin.
Hurt him.
Robbie Lawler hadn't sparred hard in years.
Right.
And to that point, that's what people need to be doing. Like, this is what I'm working. I'm going to stay in this. We do very similar
shell.
Right? Yeah.
In this shell.
And when we break that out, well, then we're going to go back to that position and do it again until it becomes again autonomous.
Yeah. Last couple questions here, just two that I end every podcast with. Sorry.
I've never
never. Good. That's good. Have you ever thought about it though?
No comment.
Yes, no comment. The answer is yes. We all have.
Hey, I don't have shovels and lie in my trunk or anything. Maybe I do, just a little bit. You never know.
I don't live in the desert.
Yeah, a lot of holes in the desert. Hey, Lake Mead is like, Lake Mead. Well,
yeah,
Mudhole Mead. As it goes down, they're finding bodies. Like,
nice.
It's true.
First of all, look, you and I are in the same genre. We see each other. We are friendly. We talked the other week, but there is no real going to be, like, let's say, return of investment on your hour here. And I really think the reason I asked this question is because I think people need to hear that everything isn't this financial return. If Rogan calls you, yeah, sure, you're going to jump on a plane tomorrow and go do the Rogan show. Not the case with me. So why say yes, Forrest? Why take an hour out of day? You're a busy dude. You got family. You're a champ.
Well, I asked you a lot of questions too, right?
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to know what you're doing. I want to get your feedback on what I think. Because turns out, and it's hard to admit, but turns out I don't know everything. Turns out there's pockets of knowledge all over there. And part of my job here is to make sure that I'm aware of these philosophies and what you guys are doing. And again, that's part of that whole picture. You guys, I'm sure, have figured things I never thought about out. It's also a good thing to rehearse your book. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I know my talking points and what I do and kind of what I believe over the last 5 years of working here at the Performance Institute. And I get a chance to speak my book. And then sometimes I even say it, and I said a few things here today, and I was like, is that true? Did that sound right? And it's always good to kind of get your talking points in front of another expert, subject matter expert, and get their feedback on it. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Turns out I've been wrong a lot. So
it's funny.
That's a good way to look at it. It's a knowledge share, right?
I like what you just said, rehearse your book right there. It's interesting. I'm trying to get into public speaking. So anybody who is looking for a keynote speak, reach out to me. Anyway, my friend actually just reached out to me and asked me if I would come speak at his company. And it was because he heard me. We had a belt promotion over the weekend, and he was there. He's one of our black belts, but he's been hearing me speak for years, right? Like as an instructor and a leader, like, in all this stuff. But now he's reached out, and he didn't reach, and he knew I wanted to speak, but he reached out to me now. And I think it's because it's what you just said. I've rehearsed my book enough.
Yeah.
Right. I have it very fine tuned. Okay. I say this, I don't say this. And it was professional and polished. So, man, that was a really good point. I like that one. Last question is, I believe everyone has a unique gift that however you want to say it, God, the universe, the world, whoever, they have that gift, and they have to go give that gift to the world. And then the world gives them something back in return for their reciprocation. What do you think your gift is?
Moderation. You won't find a lot of people that wouldn't say I'm decent, right? So I'm fair, I'm moderate, I have definitely, the other thing is, like, you won't hear me in public media criticizing, I think understanding. Like I'm able to understand your side of things or this guy's side of things and maybe not react. And the more I see like on social media and the more I hear, you know, I've always had a natural instinct to hear something that upsets me, take a beat and then say, well, where's he coming from and why? So I guess that would be kind of one of my gifts. Another one is just not being a piece of shit. No, I've always had like an insecurity complex. So I've always thought I should be doing more to help people. So, yeah. And, you know, I'm going to get back on my book. That's what we do here at the Performance Institute. We're devoted to helping the UFC athlete have an easier time making weight, perform better, stay healthier, elongate their career, make more fucking money. You know, that's what we're here to do, right? And we believe that, that if you can raise that knowledge tide, it will raise all boats.
I like it. Forrest, tell everyone where they can reach you if they're looking to either come to the PI or anything like that.
Well, if you're a UFC fighter, come to the UFC PI, and we'll do a consult, and I'll tell you what I think, and you can tell me I'm full of shit.
Awesome. Social media, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on that stuff. You know,
find him. He's a champ. He's a world champ.
I was an early adopter, so I got my name for both Instagram and Twitter.
There you go. Forrest, thanks for coming on, man. Guys, as always, don't go out in the world and try to be Forrest. He has his unique gift, his unique power that he goes and he gives to the world. Don't go out in the world and try to be me. I have my own thing that I give to the world. Please go out in the world, everyone, and find your own power.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found something useful that you can take and implement into your life. Don't forget to head over to wherever you are listening to this podcast and leave a review. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, go follow me on social media at FireMarshal205 on Instagram. Leave a comment, anything that you would like there. And as always, if you think this would be useful for somebody else that you know for their life, send it their way. That would be greatly appreciated. That's it for this episode, guys. I hope you all have a great day and you go step into that power so that you can give your purpose to the world.